Hello, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here with me today. It's truly a pleasure to see so many agencies, brands, advertisers, and industry professionals joining us. On behalf of Sense8, I'd like to personally thank you for your interest in Sense8 Google Marketing Platform Academy. When we launched this program in Greece, we had a very simple goal in mind to help your market better understand, adopt, and take full advantage of Google Marketing Platform solutions. In short, we wanted to help you prepare for the future of digital marketing in Greece. We hope today's session will provide valuable insights and inspire new opportunities for growth. Before I even go into the content itself, I just want to set the context clearly so you know exactly what you can expect out of this session and what the intention behind it really is. Firstly, this is not a sales presentation. I know everybody is quite fed up with those, so my purpose here today is to give you a clear and practical understanding of what display and video DV360 actually is, what it can realistically enable for agencies and brands, and what the first step into Google Marketing Platform can look like when it is approached in a structured and supported way. My name is Alexandra Nizzo. I am a Google Marketing Platform certified expert and head of customer success here in CE and MENA regions at Sense8. And I specialize in all those amazing business related things like digital growth strategy, client success, and strategic partnerships. Over the years, myself and my team have become increasingly passionate about helping agencies and brands unlock greater value from data and marketing technology, um, accelerate platform adoption without unnecessary stress, and turn increasingly complex digital ecosystem into measurable business outcomes. What we are seeing right now, especially in markets like Greece, is a very interesting moment. There is a strong digital maturity, very strong agency capability, but at the same time, programmatic adoption, especially at full scale, is still developing, which means one thing. The gap between early adopters and the rest of the market is still open. And that gap actually creates opportunity. As we know in business, a window of opportunity will not stay open forever. So the reason we wanted to organize this session is to share what we have seen in the market. Working with more than 350 brands and agencies across different countries, different levels of maturity, you start to notice very clear patterns in how teams operate and how their media strategies actually evolve over time. And one of the patterns we keep seeing is the following. Most teams today are already running a significant amount of digital activity across multiple platforms like Google Ads, Meta, TikTok, YouTube, as well as through various publishers, vendors, sometimes even direct deals. The activity is there, the budgets are there, the results are coming in. However, the way this activity is structured often creates a different type of challenge. What we very often see is that the ecosystem becomes fragmented over time, with data sitting in different platforms, reporting being split across multiple tools, and attribution becoming increasingly difficult to interpret, to the point where answering what should be a relatively simple question, namely, which part of the media activity is actually contributing the most to the business outcome? That's a question that becomes surprisingly complex. And if we are honest, in many cases, it does not just create complexity, it actually creates inefficiencies that are not always very visible or easy to spot. For example, budgets are being repeated across platforms, audiences are being overexposed, and decisions are being made on partial signals, not because teams are not capable, but because the system itself is highly fragmented. Now, at the same time, we are also seeing another category of agencies and brands that have started to move in a slightly different direction by gradually centralizing more of their media buying, their audience strategy, and their measurement framework. And what stands out in these cases is not only the tools they are using, but the way in which they operate. Because they tend to have more clarity, more control, and more flexibility in adapting their strategies based on actual performance and actual insights. Between these very two different approaches, there is a large part of the market that sits somewhere in the middle. Teams that are aware of DV360, for example, that may have explored it at some point or even used it in a limited capacity, but never really went deeper. And that hesitation usually comes from very few valid concerns, such as the perception that display and video 360 is mainly relevant for display. It says there in the title, right? Or that it requires very large budgets, or that is simply too complex to realistically adopt without a dedicated programmatic setup. And to be completely fair, these are concerns that are very understandable. DV360 is one of the most capable platforms in digital media. It is also a very deep platform. And what we often observe, even amongst teams that have already a lot of experience with it, is that they tend to use only a part of what it can actually offer, not because they lack capability, but because the platform evolves continuously. And in practice, the day to day reality of campaign delivery and reporting leaves very limited space to explore everything in depth. As a result, what happens quite often is that two companies can be using the same platform in very different ways. One may be using it primarily as a tool for campaign execution, while the other is using it to build a much more connected media strategy. Maybe they are activating first party data or accessing premium inventory, expanding into channels such as connected TV or digital out of home, and structuring their media activity in a more integrated way. So the difference is not the platform itself, but how it is used. And this is not a reflection of skill, but simply a reflection of how complex the ecosystem has become. With that in mind, what I would like for us to do today is not to go into technical details or walk you through the platform step by step or tell you the numerous features it has, but rather to take a step back, address some of the assumptions that exist around DV360, and help you understand why more advanced agencies and brands are already moving in this direction. And I would like to show you what a realistic and supported path into this could look like. What if, when, and how it becomes relevant for you, of course. Because ultimately, this is not about adopting a new tool. This is about understanding where the market is going and deciding how you want to position yourself within it over the next 6 months to a year or in the following months. Because what is optional today, it becomes expected very, very fast. And with that perspective in mind, let's now place DV360 into the even bigger picture. So, Display and Video 360 is part of the Google Marketing Platforms, which is Google's enterprise ecosystem for media buying, measurement, and analytics. This ecosystem includes several platforms, with DV360 for programmatic buying, Search Ads 360 for advanced search management, Campaign Manager 360 for the ad serving and measurement layer, and Google Analytics 360 for brands that are dealing with large volumes of data. Now, DV360 is the most known platform from this ecosystem, and it's built for end-to-end campaign management. Whether we're talking about planning, buying, creative workflows, measurement, and optimization, it's all in one platform. Google describes it as the tool that helps marketers manage media planning, creative development, measurement, and optimization all in one place together, right? However, before going deeper into the platform itself, what matters more is not how it works technically, but why more advanced teams are building capabilities around it today. And to understand this, we need to go back to the reality we briefly touched upon a bit earlier. If we look more closely at how most marketing ecosystems are built today, we can see that they are highly fragmented. Most brands and agencies today are running media across many places. I think I mentioned before, but let's do it again. So they can be running campaigns or media in general across Google Ads, Meta, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, local publishers, international publishers, display vendors, connected TV partners, digital out of home suppliers. The list goes on. Sometimes direct publisher deals, even. So, each of these channels may perform well individually, but the bigger problem is visibility. How do you know the following? Let's say I want to find out which channel actually contributed to the sale, or which audience saw the message too many times, which publishers delivered quality users, which part of the media mix is actually helping me, and which part is actually wasting my budget. This is one of the biggest challenges marketers face today. The issue is not a lack of activity. The issue is that activity is often decentralized. So the challenge is not activity, the challenge is visibility and control. It becomes difficult to understand which channel is actually contributing to the result, how audiences are being exposed across platforms, and where budget is being used efficiently versus where it is simply being repeated. And what we are seeing in markets like Greece specifically is that many agencies have already reached a level where performance is no longer the main issue. The issue is optimization at scale. So, my question to you is, how do you go from good campaigns, right? Honest, good old fashioned campaigns to efficient, scalable, and connected media strategies? So that's where the next level really starts. And this is exactly where we see a shift happening. More advanced agencies and brands are not necessarily doing more campaigns, but they are structuring their media differently. Instead of managing each channel separately, they start connecting media buying, audience strategy, creatives, and measurement into one unified setup where everything works together rather than fragmented. And once that happens, the way they operate changes quite significantly. They gain more clarity in their decision making because they are no longer relying or trying to piece together some information, pieces of information that lie in multiple platforms. They gain more control over how media is deployed, especially when it comes to frequency and audience exposure. And they gain more flexibility because they can adapt their strategies based on more complete and connected view of performance. And this is usually the point where platforms like DV360, together with Campaign Manager 360, the ad serving and measurement tool, start to become relevant. Not just as tools used to run campaigns, but as infrastructures that support a more intelligent and unified way of managing media. With DV360 and Campaign Manager 360, this becomes the standard. Suddenly you notice. You reduce duplication, you control frequency, you understand contribution across channels. You make decisions based on the full journey. This is not just about a tool. I need to highlight this. This is about moving from activity to intelligence. In markets like Greece, where competition is really strong, differentiation becomes very visible very quickly, not by doing more campaigns, by investing more, but by operating at a different level of maturity. Now, what we are seeing across Europe in MENA, with Greece in full focus, is that capability many teams still consider optional are quickly becoming expected. Today, unified audience management, cross-channel frequency control, connected TV, display, and consolidated measurement can still differentiate a business. Over the next maybe 6 or 12 months, even, however, more brands and agencies will adopt these approaches, driven by increasing pressure to improve efficiency, transparency, media performance, cost cutting, you name it. But eventually, these capabilities stop being a competitive advantage and simply become the baseline expectation. The teams that start building this capability today, so having a centralized, unified, all the activities working together, are usually the ones that are best positioned when the market eventually catches up. The opportunity exists in the gap between these two moments. And this particular gap seems to be closing very fast because the way marketing works is quite challenging and it's quick. It is moving toward more data driven decisions, a deeper understanding of the customer journey, and a more connected way of managing media across channels. In the past, most decisions were based on last click thinking, for example. In other words, we were asking a very simple question: which channel got the final click before the conversion? And if we look at how people actually behave today, this journey is much more complex. And let's take an example. A user see let's say a user sees first a YouTube ad, then later he can be exposed to a display campaign, then search for the brand, perhaps visit their website, see a meta ad, compare options, leave, then come back through another channel, and only then convert. If we look at the final click, we miss most of that journey. We miss the influence of earlier touch points. We miss how channels work together. And most importantly, we miss the signals that could help us make better decisions, invest smarter. And this is why the industry is evolving. If we look at the direction of digital marketing today, we see a very clear focus on first party data strategies, full funnel measurement, AI supported personalization, and stronger omnichannel systems that connect different touchpoints. In this context, centralized media buying is not only about efficiency or saving time, it is about bringing together signals, audiences, frequency, measurement, insights across channels and devices so that decisions are based on more complete pictures. And this is exactly why this moment matters. The expectation is already shifting. Clients, at least from our experience with Greece, clients are already asking more questions. Leadership teams want more clarity, and competition is becoming more advanced. And the teams that start building this capability earlier are usually the ones that are better prepared when these expectations become the standard, not the exception. This shift is not gradual, it accelerates. The moment a few agencies or brands in a market start adopting advanced setups, the expectation follows very quickly. Suddenly, what is nice to have now becomes a requirement. And despite this shift happening across the market, what we often see is that many agencies and brands are still somewhat hesitant to fully move in this direction, not because teams don't see the value or because they don't quite understand where the market is going. In many cases, it comes actually from the fact that this ecosystem was traditionally more closed, more associated with advanced advertisers, and not always very transparent from the outside. Access to information has been quite limited. The programmatic advertising space itself is continuously evolving, and as a result, it is not always easy to build a complete and accurate understanding of what it actually offers. And if you are not using it yet or not yet working on the programmatic side, it is very normal that there are quite a lot of misconceptions and even some misinformation around it. When we speak with agencies and brands that are not yet using DV360 or that have only explored it at the surface level, we tend to hear the same three assumptions quite consistently. The first one is an DV360 display and Video 360 only for display? The second isn't it only for very large budgets? And the third is, isn't it too complex for a team like ours? And to be completely fair, these assumptions are really understandable. They do make sense. If you look at the platform from the outside or your exposure to it has been quite limited, it can easily look like something built only for large global advertisers with very advanced setups. And yes, it is a powerful platform. But the reality in practice is much more nuanced and much more practical than that. It is not only about display. Let's get that off the record. Even if it is often where people associate it with, it doesn't do just that. It is not defined only by budget size, but more by how complex your media setup has become. And while it is a complex platform, the complexity becomes manageable when the approach is structured and when you focus only on what is actually relevant for your business. And this is usually the point where the perception starts to shift. So let's take a step back for a moment and look at how DV360 actually is, at what DV360 actually is in practice, beyond these assumptions. At its core, DV360 is a platform that helps teams plan, buy, manage, measure digital media in a more connected way, in very simplified terms. If we look at how Google defines it, it is a platform where teams can design creatives, organize audience data, um, access and purchase inventory, and continuously optimize campaigns. But if we translate that into business language, what it really means is that DV360 gives agencies and brands a more unified way to manage media buying across major programmatic channels instead of working in separate environments. And this is where the real value starts to become clear. Because instead of thinking in terms of individual channels, teams can actually start thinking in terms of connected system. A system where campaigns, audiences, creatives, inventory, and insights are all working together. And it let's come back and address these most common misconceptions we mentioned earlier. I think it's a good time to do that, don't you? Good. DV360 is only for display. This is probably the most common misconception. Let's unpack that. So, DV360 is not only for banners or standard display campaigns. It can support display, video, YouTube, audio, CTV, connected TV, right? Digital out of home, and other programmatic buying routes. According to Google's product overview, DV360 enables marketers to manage reservations, programmatic and programmatic guaranteed campaigns across display, video, CTV, connected TV, YouTube, and other channels all in one place. Digital out-of-home inventory can also be accessed through DV360 Marketplace, depending on publisher availability, and programmatic digital out-of-home buying is supported within the platform. So when we speak about Display and Video 360, we are not speaking about display only. We are speaking about a media buying platform that gives teams access to a much broader programmatic ecosystem, including premium publisher deals, connected TV opportunities, YouTube, and out-of-home environments. We are already seeing this shift in Southern European markets, for example, including Greece, where video, YouTube, and CTV consumption are growing fast, but activation is still catching up, which creates a very interesting window of opportunity. And this matters because the user journey is not happening in one channel anymore. We saw the example earlier. Your audience is moving across screens, platform, moments, and DV360 allows you to plan for that reality in a truly connected way. Now, the second one, I like this one particularly hard. So DV360 is only for large budgets. Once we clarify, right, that it's not limited to display, the next question that usually comes up is around budget. This is partially true and partially misleading. That's why I love the question, because it's complex enough. DV360 is often used for by large advertisers indeed, because the platform is powerful. And it makes a lot more sense, and it makes the most sense when it has enough media activity to fully benefit from its capabilities. So we should be honest here. DV360 is not necessarily the right solution for your business at every stage. If a company has a very small media budget and only needs simple campaign execution, then starting with a simpler platform is often more practical. Because when the budget is too limited, it can become too fragmented across channels, and the value of a larger platform like DV360 may not be as obvious or be fully visible to you. But if an agency or brand is already investing seriously in digital media across multiple channels, managing several campaigns, or looking for more control and better visibility, then the question starts to change. It is no longer, are we big enough? The question becomes, are we ready to buy media in a more centralized and data driven way? Now, once we get this question out of the way, um, DV360 is too complex would be another concern. Um, well, to be very clear, DV360 is a complex platform, and we should not pretend otherwise. It brings together multiple areas, from programmatic media buying and YouTube to inventory strategy, marketplace deals, audience management, optimization, reporting, integrations with the wider Google marketing platform ecosystem. But in reality, complexity itself is not the biggest issue. What usually creates friction is the feeling that you need to understand everything at once without knowing what is actually relevant for your business. This is a typical point where teams tend to feel overwhelmed. And in practice, this is how we usually approach it with agencies and brands we work with. We don't start from the platform, we start from the business. We look at the full context, your clients, your brand objectives, your customer journey, your current media mix, your KPIs, your internal team structure. And only based on that, we define where DV360 can actually create value. From there, we identify the right cases to start with and build everything around that. Instead of trying to navigate the entire platform from day one. And this is something we've seen working consistently across different agencies and brands. The teams that approach the integration in this way don't try to learn everything at once. The focus is on what matters. They build confidence step by step, and they turn what initially feels complex into something very practical and manageable. So, depending on the priorities, the focus can be very different. If the goal is lead generation, the starting point will look one way. If the focus is video and awareness, the approach may be different. If the interest is in first party data, frequency management, premium inventory, then those become the areas to explore. So the goal is not understanding everything. The goal is to understand what actually creates value for your business and build from there in a structured and realistic way. And there's one more concern that comes up quite often, the idea that DV360 is expensive. And yes, there is a tech fee, And it's important to be transparent about that. But what the tech fee actually represents is very important to understand, because DV360 is not just a buying tool, it's the infrastructure that Google has built to bring everything in one place, right? Have everything together so media can be managed in a much more efficient and controlled way. And in practice, what we've seen, the real issue usually is not the cost of the platform, but the cost of inefficiency. Because most setups today, the same users are reached multiple times across platforms, budgets are duplicated, and frequency is not controlled. And that adds up very quickly. When things become more connected, that's when everything changes. You start using the same budgets more intelligently, reducing waste, controlling exposure, and often reaching more users without increasing spend. And we've seen this consistently across the markets. Many advertisers come in with this concern around costs, but once they start and campaigns are properly optimized, they often see better costs they were getting from other media buying platforms where they did not have any tech fee. So the conversation shifts. Not is there a tech fee, but the question becomes, what are we actually getting in return? Especially when you look over it in long term, not as an isolated cost, you may find that the savings are actually covering your costs and a lot more above it. Good. So, what does all of this actually look like in practice? So, I want to take with you a very real scenario, one that we've seen very often. An agency, let's say, it's already doing a great job. Campaigns are running across Google Ads, Meta, TikTok, YouTube, maybe even working with a few publishers directly. The team is capable, clients are active, results are coming in. And for a while, that works. But then something starts to shift. Not inside the agency first, but the expectations coming from clients. Because clients don't just want campaigns anymore, they start asking for more. They want to understand how their channels work together, not just individually. They want access to better inventory, premium publishers, new formats, new environments. They want to explore channels they haven't used before, like connected TV, digital out of home, more advanced video. They want better targeting, more granular audience strategies, even better use of their own data. At the same time, they want more clarity over their KPIs, their achieved results. They want better reporting and fewer inefficiencies. That's where the conversation changes. And this is usually the moment where agencies start to feel the limitation of working in a fragmented setup, because delivering all of this across multiple platforms, disconnected tools, and separate buying routes becomes harder and harder to manage in a consistent manner. And this is where a different approach starts to make sense. Not just running campaigns across multiple platforms, but starting to bring more of that activity into one place. A place where you can access multiple channels. I mentioned them before, let me refresh. Multiple channels like display, video, YouTube, connected TV, even digital out of home. A place where you can work with a much broader inventory ecosystem, including premium publishers, programmatic deals. A place where targeting becomes more flexible, more granular, and more consistent across campaigns, and the place where all the data, all the signals, and all the learnings start to connect. And this is where platforms like DV360 start to change the role of the agency. Because at that point, the agency is no longer just executing campaigns, it starts building a new capability. Sounds like a new service out there in your portfolio, right? a capability that allows them to offer more advanced strategies, to access new types of inventory, to access data in a more intelligent way, and to bring a level of control and clarity that is difficult to achieve in a fragmented setup. And this is a very real business impact because agencies that build this kind of capability don't just run better campaigns, they position themselves differently in the market. They can have more strategic conversations with clients, build, of course, a lot more trust, maybe secure additional budget segments for their media business. So very often they become more attractive to new clients simply because they bring something that not every agency out there can offer. And that's the real shift. It's not just about doing the same work in a different way, it's about expanding what the agency is capable of delivering and how it is perceived by the market, right? But this shift is not only happening on the agency side. We see a very similar pattern when we look at brands. In the most cases, brands are already running significant amount of media across different platforms and partners like Google Ads, social platforms, direct publisher deals, CTV, YouTube, digital out of home, and the list goes on. What we see more often is a lack of clarity and control over that activity. Because when everything is managed in separate environments, it becomes difficult to answer some very fundamental questions, like where is my budget actually going? And we reach new users, or the same ones actually we reached multiple times across other platforms or different platforms. Maybe we could wonder which environment is actually contributing to my performance. And what we've seen working with the brands out there is where we need more connected setup, that we need a more connected setup, and that becomes very important, not necessarily to do more but to bring more structure and consistency into what already exists. For example, let me pause right here and provide an example. Instead of managing publisher relationships one by one, brands can start accessing a broader range of inventory, including premium publishers like CNN, New York Times, Expedia, and others, through a more centralized approach. Instead of planning each channel separately, they can start activating across display, YouTube, CTV, or even digital out of home within the same ecosystem. And one of the most important shifts we see out there is around frequency. Because when channels are managed independently, it becomes very difficult to control how often a user is exposed to your messaging, or even more difficult to use your first party data consistently across all touchpoints. But when activity becomes more connected, that control becomes much more realistic, and the way first party data can be activated across channels becomes much more consistent and meaningful. And this is where the value starts to become visible. This is exactly the moment where I need to pause and tell you that it's not necessarily about doing something completely different, but having more consistency altogether, more control, a clearer understanding on how media is actually working together while managing everything from a more centralized setup. And for many brands, this is the point where media stops being a collection of separate campaigns and starts behaving more like a system. In many cases, this shift is not initiated by marketing teams themselves. Quite frankly, as we've seen, it comes from leadership, because they have questions around transparency, frequency, and control. And having the right infrastructure becomes essential to answer those questions with confidence. Um, right. At this point, I want to share a few things about DV360 that, from my experience, usually changes the way teams look at programmatic once they see them in practice. Because most of the time, when agencies and brands first hear about DV360, they don't realize the full scope or of what it actually enables. For example, did you know that DV360 is connected to more than 75 ad exchanges globally? Which means that instead of being limited to a few platforms, you are operating across a very broad ecosystem. And in practice, no matter where your audience is spending time, DV360 gives you a way to find them and reach them. Another thing that teams usually find surprising is the number of formats you can run from one place. From display, video, YouTube, audio, connected TV, digital out of home, you name it. And the real value here is not only access to formats, but the ability to connect them under the same strategy, the same audiences, and the same measurement. They also find it very interesting that DV360 has a marketplace section where you can negotiate directly with SSPs and publishers and activate programmatic guaranteed or private marketplace deals. Sounds cool, right? Which means that access to premium publishers is no longer something separate, it becomes part of your overall media strategy, not an isolated channel. And one of the areas that usually creates biggest shift is audiences, because you don't just have one way of targeting users. You can use your first party data. You can leverage Google audiences like custom intent, affinity, and market. You can look for more niche or hard to reach segments. For example, very specific business to business profiles like CEOs in tech. You can also connect with 25 DMPs such as Oracle or Nielsen and bring your data into your campaigns. So instead of being limited by platform targeting, you can start expanding how precisely you want to reach your audience. And something more advanced, DV360 can integrate actually with external signals via APIs, which means campaigns don't have to be static. They can actually adapt based on real inputs. Whether we take signals like weather conditions, product availability, or other business signals of your choice. For example, some of you may have already seen ads changing depending on the weather. This is the kind of logic that can be implemented. And from a control perspective, brands also find it very valuable that they can use third-party brand safety and verification tools like Double Verify or IIS. So while you scale and expand your media, you are also keeping control over quality, transparency, and where your ads actually appear. And usually, when teams start putting all of these pieces together, that's when the perception shifts. Because at this point, DV360 no longer just a platform where you run campaigns. It becomes a one-stop shop for media buying where channels, data, inventory, measurement all come together. And this isn't just theory. Let me show you exactly what it looks like with brands you may know. First case, let's take Attica, working with MediaCube, ran an up to 40% off beauty campaign in April 2025. The lever was frequency management inside TV360, right? Single campaign, automated bidding, capping enforced across display and YouTube together. The results. They got 22% more unique reach in just 1 week. CPM down to 42%. CPV down 75%. Same audience pool, same budget. They just stopped paying twice for the same impressions. Vasya from Attica's e-commerce team summed it up. DV360 strengthened the brand's visual presence while optimizing uniquely average frequency. That's the whole point. I agree with Vlassi for sure. Second case, same partnership, different campaign. Attica and Media Cube launched the new Carolina Herrera makeup line, lipstick, lip liner, accessories targeting beauty, fashion, and luxury shoppers' audiences with the same approach. Media unification inside DV360, remarketing, brand safety, geo targeting, both standard and 15-second YouTube formats. The result 30% incremental reach in 1 month at no extra cost. CPM was down 62% and CPV was down 75%. And there's the most important part. Attica is now adding DV360 permanently to their digital media mix. The model isn't just a one off experiment anymore, it's their standard. Let's take another one. Novibet went into Euro 2024 with a centralized media strategy on DV360. Display, video, YouTube, native, all unified with frequency capped across the full mix. The results were astounding. 52% increase in unique reach in a month, no extra cost. But the more interesting number is what happened to the brand impact. They ran a brand lift study focused on purchase intent. Absolute lift of 2.8 percentage points, which is 40% above category average. Relative lift was 14.5%. So they didn't just reach more people. Those people moved closer to actual conversion. They're now expanding this model to Mexico, Brazil, and Ireland in 2026. Three campaigns, three categories, same pattern. The lever in every case is frequency management, capping across channels rather than within each one. The results is the same within the same shape. More unique users at the same or lower costs, lower CPM and CPV, and brand metrics that actually move. And the most important signal isn't any single number, is that all three teams kept the model and expanded it. That's what this looks good for us looks like in practice, at least from our perspective here in Sense8. So let's move to something I would really like to share because this is where it becomes intricate when it comes to adoption. I want to share how we usually approach this journey with our partners the first 90 days. Because that's where we've seen the real difference being made, not in the platform itself, but how you actually get started. When teams start with DV360, the success scenario is not here's the platform and good luck. It's the partnership. You bring the business knowledge, the client, brand context, and the commitment to learn. And we, Sense8, bring the technology, the know how, the onboarding structure, and the practical support. And when these come together, that's when actually all the things start to work. A typical first 90 days onboarding usually looks like this. In the first month, the focus is on understanding your business, your current media setup, your objectives, your internal team, and your priority use cases. At the same time, access is provided, onboarding starts, initial training happens, and the first strategy is built together. In the second month, we move into execution. The first campaigns are launched, optimization begins, reporting is reviewed, and the team starts becoming comfortable with the platform through real work, not theory. And then in the third month, the focus shifts toward planning and scaling. We look at what worked, what should be expanded, which campaigns or clients are right, are in the immediate next step, and which capabilities should be developed further. This is a model that we've seen working consistently with different agencies and brands. It's structured enough to reduce risks at the beginning, but also practical enough to create real momentum. And if we look at how this works in practice, the starting point is slightly different for agencies than for brands, and the direction itself is very clear, very similar. With agencies, the starting point is usually around opportunity. We look at their client portfolio, identify where DV360 can add value, and start from there. Because instead of trying to activate everything at once, the focus is on a few clear use cases, two or three clients where the impact is visible and the team can learn by doing. From there, campaigns are launched, strategies are tested, and over time, confidence grows. And what changes is not just how campaigns are run, but how the agency positions itself. They move from execution of the campaigns to proposing more advanced, more connected media strategies to their clients. For brands, the starting point is usually control, not necessarily doing more, as I mentioned before, not understanding, but understanding and connecting what is already happening. Most brands already run activity across multiple channels and partners, but it's often fragmented. So the focus is on bringing more visible, better use of the data and more consistency across channels. And again, instead of changing everything at once, the approach is simple. Start with one clear use case, prove the value, and then expand. And this is where both paths come together. Because whether it starts from opportunity or control, the end goal is the same. Moving from fragmented campaigns to a more connected, more controlled, and more strategic way of managing media. And in both cases, either way, what we've seen is that the platform itself is only part of the equation, because the real difference usually comes from how this is actually built and supported over time. From our experience, providing the technology was never enough. A platform like TV360 can create a lot of value, but only if teams know how to use it in the right way for their business. What tends to make the difference in practice is having the right level of support around the platforms. That means onboarding, training, campaign setup support, strategy guidance, troubleshooting, optimization reviews, and practical education adapted to the team's level. We do not believe in giving teams a login and leaving them alone. We believe in building capability together. What this requires on one side is commitment, openness to learn, test, and build this properly over time. On the other hand, from our end, it requires structure, platform knowledge, of course, technical support, and the experience of having done this across different agencies, different brands, and different markets. So, if we take a step back from everything we've discussed today, there is one key message I would really like to leave you with. DV360 is not only a platform decision, it's a positioning decision. It's a decision about whether you want to stay reactive to where the market is going, or start building the capability that allows you to lead the next stage in that market. And the best time to explore this is not when every client is already using it. The best time is now, while the opportunity is still early enough to differentiate, but mature enough to execute safely. That's the sweet spot for us. So the next step doesn't need to be a commitment, it can simply be a focused conversation. We sit together, look at your setup, your clients, your goals, and your media activity. And we assess very practically, does it create value for you now? And if it does, we build the first setup. Because the teams that move early usually don't just catch the shift, they define the shift. And now, We got so many great questions in advance, and I'm sure some of you have some really fresh ones they got during this workshop. So I invite you to scan the code on the slide and get in touch with us, whether to raise a new topic or ask a question or have a focused one-on-one conversation about your goals, your clients, your media activity, or if it makes sense to transition towards an enterprise solution right now. We would definitely love to get to know you and get in touch. While this will remain on the screen, I would like to take the chance to address the questions most commonly raised during the sign up form. And let's take three of them. During this time, please scan the QR and get in touch with us. So one of the most frequent ones was, is DV360 only useful for brand awareness? Okay, very fair one. I really love this one. It's indeed one of the um, most frequently asked ones we see in our day-to-day activity as well. So the short answer is no. DV360 can support the full funnel marketing from awareness and consideration all the way to conversion and customer retention. But there's a caveat when the right strategy and setup is in place. A big part of this comes from the platform's machine learning capabilities. Like any advanced buying platform, DV360 performs best when it has enough quality data and very clear signals to learn from. The more effective campaigns, audiences, creatives, and measurement are structured, the better the platform can optimize towards specific business objectives. So, whether the goal is reach and visibility, driving site engagement, generating leads, increasing sales, or building customer loyalty, DV360 can absolutely support these outcomes. The key, it's not just platform capabilities, but also know how you structure your strategy with DV360. To make this more tangible, let me share a very briefly example from the hospitality sector, for example, within a region. So we had a large hotel chain recently having some campaigns with us. They are called Yes Plaza hotels, and they wanted to increase their direct staycation bookings in a highly competitive market, while also understanding which audiences were more likely to convert in an efficient manner. Now, using DV360, the strategy combined the hotel's own first-party data with Google audiences and different audience layers across the funnel. Rather than running only broad awareness campaigns, activities, the campaigns were optimized specifically towards conversion outcomes. The results were a 2.3 CTR percent CTR, with over 71% of the campaign's total conversions driven through this audience strategy, right? First party audience. This makes this case interesting, not only from the performance perspective itself, but the fact that it demonstrates how DV360 can move beyond awareness and support very concrete business objectives when the right data, targeting, and optimization strategies are in place. Now, the second session that won the top most frequently asked questions by yourself within the sign up forms was, what is actually the difference between a DV360 seat and an advertiser account? Very simply put, the highest level of account you can get in DV360 is the partner account, also commonly referred to as the partner seat. Now, this is something that only Google certified resellers can provide, GMP resellers can provide. The rest of the agencies can provide you with top an advertiser account. That's the highest level they can go to. While we can go a level above as resellers and provide to you a partner level account. Think of the partner account as the umbrella structure. Underneath it, you can create multiple advertiser accounts, and each advertiser account can include multiple campaigns you can run. The main advantage of having your own partner seat is visibility, ownership, and flexibility. For example, if you're an agency, having a partner account allows you to actually create separate advertiser accounts for each of your clients, keeping activities, allowing you to keep their activities fully separate, fully confidential, even. Um, you can also provide individual access to the relevant client account for those users belonging to that client company. So one client cannot see another client's data or account or even know the other advertiser accounts even exist. If you are a brand and you want separate advertiser accounts or separate structures generally within your DV360 for different countries or different business units or locations, while still managing everything under one centralized structure, well, that's the way to go. A partner seat is what you need. This helps a lot from a reporting perspective as well, from our experience with our clients. Another very important difference is ownership and portability. A partner account is transferable between GMP resellers without losing your history, your audiences, your setups, or campaign learnings. An advertiser account on its own, it's much more limited and in most cases cannot be transferred, unfortunately, without losing historical data and infrastructure continuity. So in practice, the seat gives you much more control, scalability, transparency, and long-term ownership over your DV360 ecosystem. Hope that answers it. Um, Good. Then we have the third question, which I found to be very interesting. How long does it take to get access to DV360 and start running campaigns? That's something we get quite often. So the good news is that the process is actually quite straightforward, at least for our company. Usually everything starts with a conversation. We first take the time to understand your business goals, your current media setup, team structure, and whether DV360 or even broader Google marketing platform system genuinely makes sense for your needs. If we jointly decide there is a strong fit and clear value, we then align on the action plan, joint action plan, and move into the contracting phase. Once the agreement is signed, we handle the full administrative process as part of the onboarding from our end. We open the partner account with Google. We enable access for your team, set up the initial structure, set up the account, plan the onboarding, the training, the enablement journey all together. So the technical account creation itself usually takes around 2 to 4 business days with Google. So that's the only, I would say, set time frame that we have. The rest of those timelines are going to be agreed upon according to case by case scenarios. So in reality, we've seen full journeys from an initial introduction meeting to launching the first campaign happen in as little as 1 week, for example, especially when there is no major delay around legal reviews or contracting terms, and the team, of course, has enough experience with DV360 to get active very fast. From our side, we're ready to move as fast as your business needs. Honestly, the companies that move early and build momentum quickly are usually the ones that end up shaping the market rather than following it later, as I mentioned before. So we do have a value out of that. So I just hope that I was able to answer all your questions, maybe address some of the key concerns or misconceptions there were out there related to DV360. I do appreciate your time, and I do hope that you are more comfortable now with the future in terms of in terms of digital marketing within Greece. Thank you. Look forward to getting to know you and have those meaningful, practical conversations about your growth strategy and what we can do and DV360 can do to help you out in that journey. Thank you so much.